All right, welcome everyone. My name is Trayton DeVore. I'm co-founder and creative director at All Street Wealth. And over the next 30, 45 minutes, we're gonna break down what you need to know about building your business online and getting clients from social media, because all three of us have primarily built our businesses online. And personally, I've never done business in person. Everything has came from our website or social media or SEO. And based on some of the industry reports that we've seen, I know one of these is from Barron's, social media is just becoming more important in today's world. Half of investors are saying that it plays a role in who they hire as an advisor, and 20% are saying that it's the sole deciding factor. And obviously, none of these numbers are 100%. We're not saying that you need to have social media to build a successful business in today's world, but obviously the younger the demographic that you're trying to pursue as clients, the more important social media is. And kind of similar to investing, the earlier you get started, the longer that your efforts are going to compound over time. Because in reality, social media is a long game, but we've just seen it work really well for us and in ways that other marketing just can't really scale. So to get started, Thomas and Rachel are going to break down some of the numbers and results that we've seen within our own firms at All Street and at Camp Wealth.
Yep. So to be honest, I feel like social media has always been obvious to me. And before we can dive into this presentation talking about how to do social media, I think we need to build a little bit of credibility here. So I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this. I started in the industry probably like most of you. I started at a broker dealer. I got there the first week and they said, create the list of 300 names of people that you can call on. They said, go to networking events, go to volunteer opportunities. I even came back one time from a friend's wedding and got yelled at because I didn't have enough leads from that wedding. And I realized that this can't be the best way. Everybody was preaching to me that financial planning is so valuable. And I had this realization that if financial planning is valuable and people need my help, shouldn't I be able to attract them versus sell to everybody I know? And once I realized that, I decided social media is going to be the way that I'm going to grow my business. And basically, I launched All Street Wealth with Trayton about 3.5 years ago. And in this last year, we've averaged over 15 high net worth qualified prospects a month. I've built to over 105,000 a month in reoccurring revenue. We've brought in over 22 million in AUM in the last 12 months, and we're not even an AUM focused firm. Almost 98% of our client revenue is from financial planning fees. And in the last 12 months alone, I've generated over 31.4 million impressions on Twitter alone. And I'm not here to tell you that impressions are the only metric for success. There's a lot of ways of getting views, but what I've found is the more impressions that we get, the more prospects we get, and the more clients that we get.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel, for those of you who don't know me. And I sent out my first social media post just over 3 years ago. At the time, I started with probably like a lot of you doing traditional financial advisor marketing. I was doing cold calls, paid lead gen services, asking for referrals. It was a lot of outbound marketing. And as an introvert, I thought it would be really nice if people could just find me, which I assume a lot of us would like that. But that's something we now call inbound marketing. And at the time seemed like a fantasy, right? Not something really achievable. But I saw a few people, not just financial advisors, but people building businesses through social media, and they were doing exactly that. They were just sharing their knowledge, their experience, their ideas, and people thought, wow, this person has solutions to my problem. I would love to reach out to them to see if they could help me. And that's the very idea behind social media. So 3 years ago, I was struggling with revenue, profitability, just trying to survive. And then if we fast forward to 3 years today, now my biggest issues in the business are just handling the inbound lead flow. And that's all thanks to the power of social media and finally sending out that first post.
So let's talk about what social media really is. I think when advisors think about marketing, they think more like Nike, right? So they see Nike, and Nike can basically put out an ad for their new Jason Tatums, right? And people are gonna see the commercial, they're gonna see the ad, and they're gonna go buy the shoe. Why are they gonna do that? Well, first of all, they like basketball, they need basketball shoes, maybe Jason Tatum's their favorite player, and it's only $150. The stakes are super low. Worst case scenario, you can return them. You're maybe out $150 if you can't. But that's just not really how it works with financial advisors, right? My minimum fee to work with me is $12,000 a year. For an employee, $18,000 a year for a business owner, and it scales from there. And so nobody is gonna see one post that I put out and say, oh my gosh, I have to work with Thomas, right? What ends up happening is you basically are just nurturing, right? So my goal is that I'm educating continually over and over and over. And sometimes that's gonna hit them and they're gonna learn from it. Other times they're just not gonna be at the stage of life or the point to take that and learn from it. And so what ends up happening is they keep learning from me, they keep learning from me, they keep learning from me. And then all of a sudden their business has grown. They go to pay their taxes and they're like, oh my gosh, I have all these underpayment penalties. I owe a ton in taxes. I don't have the money. I really need help. My goal with social media is to just be the first thing that comes to their mind at that point when they say, oh my gosh, I need to go hire Thomas. I know he can solve my problems. So once you start to understand that, you realize that marketing for us is more personal branding than it is traditional marketing. Our job is to build trust and build connection. It's not about being transactional. If you look at my social media, I never ask for anything. I don't have any calls to action. I'm not telling anybody they have to go work with me. My job is just to nurture and educate, so when they hit their pain point, they say, I gotta reach out to Thomas. So how do you really do this, right? Well, what you really need to do is you need to write in your audience's voice, but you also have to create your own voice. So creating your own voice is a lot about letting people know who you are, what you sound like, what you know, so that way they know what it's gonna be like to work with you. But I also think writing in your audience's voice matters too. I think if you look across at a lot of social media in the industry, you'll find it just seems like people are regurgitating the CFP textbook or an Investopedia article, right? That's not interesting. That's not getting anybody to want to read it. But on top of that, they're using terms that people don't understand, right? They're worried that they're going to put out content and other advisors are going to argue with them or be like, oh, you sound dumb. But what ends up happening is you use these acronyms, you use things that aren't relatable, you say things that don't make sense to the average consumer. And what you need to understand, right, is that when somebody hires a financial advisor, they're hiring a teacher, right? They want somebody who's gonna make things easy for them to understand. They want somebody who's gonna give them the information so they can go make decisions. So if you're not relatable, you're not making things easy to understand in social media, you're gonna lose them, right? So they're scrolling all day. You want them to stop on your post. What ends up happening is you have an acronym or some term they don't know. You need to understand they're never copying and pasting that and going to Google and researching the word you said. They're just scrolling right past you and thinking that you're unrelatable. So make sure you write in the way that they understand. And honestly, I think Tyler Olson is one of the best examples of this, right? He's on Twitter, he works with doctors. He knows more about what doctors talk about than anybody else. So now they feel like this is relatable, he understands us. That's something that most advisors don't. I wanna work with him. And lastly, a lot of advisors will ask me, hey, I wanna get started on social media. Should I do this from my business page or should I do this from my personal page? Understand that people wanna work with you, not your business brand. How do I know this is true? I'm on my third firm. I started out of college at a company, I left, my clients came with me. I went and worked with Justin Castelli. He told me to go start my own firm. My clients went with me. If I left All Street and started a new firm, do you know where my clients would go? They would come with me, right? So people want to work with you. They don't really care about the brand behind you. So make sure with all of your social media, you are talking from your page with your voice, not from your brands.
Yeah, and I think a lot of advisors have the wrong perspective on how social media works. It's not about digital sales, or like Thomas mentioned, it's not transactional. Because I see a lot of people and a lot of marketers talk about like, oh, send 100 DMs a day and a couple people reach out. Maybe over time, a few of those people become clients. Like, you can definitely do that. That can be part of an overall strategy. But when we're talking about social media, like Rachel had mentioned, we're talking about creating inbound interest. And that starts with, like Josh Brown mentioned last night, like picking a platform. Like, where does your audience live? And then you have to regularly create content and make people aware of what you do. So that could be Twitter, it could be LinkedIn, it could be Facebook, it could be Reddit. But the idea is just making people aware and regularly showing up. So when you're creating content, whether that's podcasts or videos or articles, like if it's good enough and if it's relevant enough, people are gonna follow you. Like, they're gonna get interested over time. And if they stay interested and you stay consistent and present on social media, eventually they're going to start clicking around your digital presence. They're going to see your profile over the next 6, 12, 24 months. And once they click on that profile, like that needs to be optimized for them to go from, I've never seen this person before, now I know who they are, and now I feel comfortable enough for them to be working with my money. Like it's a huge jump from just a random profile on social media to actually becoming a client. So when someone goes to your profile, like I think the two most important things are your bio and then the link in that bio. So when someone goes there, I've seen a lot of advisor profiles, they're just blank. Like there is nothing in there. Maybe it says like LPL advisor, there's a disclosure link or something, but it doesn't say, oh, I'm a financial planner that works with $1 million business owners, or oh, I'm a financial planner that works with millennials in tech, or like Tyler Olson, I think his just says like the physician's financial planner or something like that. Like he defines who he's working with, and I think everyone needs to do that if you have a social media profile. And then secondarily, that link is how they're gonna continue to learn more and actually like start to get into the flow of your business and seeing what services you offer and if there's pricing on your website, all that sort of stuff. And since we're talking about social media, like most people are not on their desktop or on their laptop when they're scrolling on social media. They're just sitting on their phone, maybe at work or at home. So when someone clicks that link, your website needs to be optimized for mobile. Like I know at All Street, I checked this morning, in the past 28 days, I think we've had about 1,600 website visitors and 41% were on mobile. And I've reviewed hundreds of advisor sites over the past couple of years, and I would say a majority just do not look good on mobile. Like the text size is wrong, like things are misformatted, the images are messed up, like the visuals might be blurry. It's just kind of hard to navigate the website. And to put that in perspective, it would almost be like if you did a lot of business in person. Like if 41% of people could not find your office and actually get in and talk with you guys, like that problem would be solved very quick. And I would say if everyone in the audience went on their phone and checked the firm's website, you'd probably be surprised at how tough it is to actually start doing business with you. Because when someone opens it, like what's that first message say? Does it say financial advice for $1 million business owners? Or does it just say something that's like very generic that doesn't really tell anyone more about what you do? Because then there's also the call to actions. Like that's the big thing to get someone to become a client. Like they can learn about financial planning, but we actually need them to take action and either get on our calendar or submit a message. So thinking about what that action is, like Taylor Schulte, I know he has the free assessment that's worked well for years, and there's a process. Like someone starts this, they know what's going to happen next. Like on our website, our main call to action is talk with an advisor. And the reason we did that is because we think that's what couples are talking about at night. Like they're not going to say, oh, we need to schedule a call, or oh, we need to learn more. Like they're probably saying, yeah, we need to talk with an advisor. So when they come to our website and that's the action that we're prompting them to, like we've just seen that work really well. And again, just to step back, like this all starts with just being active on social media and people being aware of who you are, because without that, like that journey just doesn't happen. Thomas, I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit more.
So I think a lot of people get excited, right? They're going to start on social media and they think, great, I'm going to have some good posts, and all of a sudden that's going to convert people to clients. But what you really need to do is you need to take a step back and think about what is that journey that you want people to go on. Because what ends up happening is you start in social and you have some good posts, right? Where are they going to go next? They're going to go to your profile. If your profile is not optimized, you lost them. Okay, but now let's say your profile is optimized. You have a good key line, here's who I work with, and they're like, oh, okay, that's me, I can relate to that. Let me go click their link. No link, right? You lost them, okay? Then you add a link. They click the link, they go to your website. Your website doesn't talk about who they work with, okay? Now you do that. Then they go to your pricing page and they're like, I don't know if what is their pricing? I lost them there. Okay, great. Then you add that in. They say, okay, now how do I talk to the advisor, right? You don't have a way for them to schedule or apply. You lose them there. And so what you need to understand on this social to client journey, there is so many touch points, and you can lose them at any single one if you don't get it right. And so I always push advisors here. And when Trayton and I started All Street, he came out to Indy and we spent about 4 days building our entire process from prospect to client, from client through onboarding, from onboarding through reviews, et cetera. And we review this all the time, right? We all the time realize, here's a problem, how do we go solve it? Just like with me with my clients, after every main review season, I say, what could we have done better? How can we make our process better? How are we going to become better? This is what you need to do with social. It really is another business. You need to make sure that you're not just throwing posts out there and thinking it works. You're thinking, what happens when it does work, and how do I get people to become clients and not lose them in that journey?
Yeah, and then with that, we have to talk about your competitive advantage. So I'm super excited to talk about this because I see a few levels to the competitive advantage. And this first level I want to talk about, almost everyone in this room has, and I don't see it used enough online. And that is simply the credibility of being a financial advisor. When we think about the social media landscape, we're really not competing just with other financial advisors. And when we think about how many advisors are on social media and doing it really well, there's not that many, but there is a ton of noise on social media, right? And a lot of that in the finance space, that noise is being generated by unlicensed, unregulated, non-financial professionals. So our benefit, one, is that we all have expertise, we have licenses, some of us have designations, that gives us an instant step up that when we talk about posting online on social media, we have to remind people of that all the time. And we do that with our hooks. You do that when you, in the first 30 seconds of a YouTube video, when you say, I've worked with dozens of retirees over the past 8 years. That's all subtle credibility that a non-financial professional just can't say. But the other benefit here with the credibility of being an advisor is that you are working with clients every day and understanding and learning their pain points and helping them solve solutions. We've heard it over and over again in this marketing conference, but marketing is all about pain points, right? What are the pain points that at some point they become so unbearable, they have to reach out and take action to have somebody help them solve that pain. So as an advisor, we talk to clients almost every day about these pain points. So we can take that and help other people with it, right? By posting it online. If you're a client, if you have a great client who's experiencing a pain point, if you take that, post about it online, post about the solution that you help that client with. You don't even have to mention the client. Of course, we can't with confidentiality, but we can talk about the techniques and the strategies that we use as financial advisors. So we have some of the best content that we can leverage just as being a financial advisor. The second level to this, though, with your competitive advantage, I see it as something called a category of one. So I don't really see that we are competing against each other. Thomas isn't my competition. I'm not his competition, because we're showing up online as completely ourselves, right? So it's my voice, my beliefs, my philosophies. Thomas will never be better at being me than I will, and I'll never be a better Thomas than he will be. That's what we call a category of one. So it comes from this marketing concept called law of category, where it says to really succeed and be profitable in a certain category, you have to be first, right? And there's a lot of saturated categories already out there. There's helping with retirees, and that's really difficult for us as independent advisors or small advisors to leapfrog and try to be first in that category. So what we do, what the workaround is, we create our own unique category, one that not only are we first in, but we're really the only ones able to even be in that category because we're building a personal brand. So there's creating a category of one through just being 100% yourself. There's also doing it through really niching down, which we'll talk quite a bit about. But I think, Thomas, you had something to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's funny to me all the time because advisors will always say like, oh, like, you know, I just don't know if I should get started on social media. There's so many advisors who already serve this audience well, right? And I think outside of social media, that's true. There's tons of advisors with retirees. There's tons of advisors with business owners. There's tons of advisors that are good at equity compensation. But if I'd ask you, and I ask advisors all the time, name 10 financial advisors you think do social media well. Most people get to 5, right? 5. And this is the best way to be able to get in front of an audience, grow a client base. And most advisors can't even name more than 5 advisors doing it well. To me, the competitive advantage is that this is an open landscape, right? You can find any niche, and you could be on Twitter, you could be on LinkedIn, you could be on Instagram, you could be anywhere that you like to create. But with so few advisors actually doing social media well, I feel like there's a huge competitive advantage to get started and actually win at doing it.
100%. And I think we have to talk about the not focusing on a specific audience or a niche, because this is a super common mistake. We're going to go through a bunch of mistakes here, and I wish somebody would have told me all of these before I started. would have saved me a ton of time, so we're going to try to save you guys a ton of time with posting on social media. But not focusing on a specific audience is a big one. The paradox of social media is that the smaller you focus, the more outsized your results. So I know we all have struggled with this. I struggled with establishing a niche early on. It feels like you're isolating people. But the truth is, if you try to speak to everyone, you end up speaking to no one. What we're trying to accomplish with social media is we want to feel like we're reaching through the screen. We want the reader or the viewer to feel like we are reaching out directly to them and we're solving their specific pain points. That doesn't happen if you're talking to dozens of different people, if you're talking to retirees one day, you're talking to millennials the next day. No one is going to feel that connection without hyper specificity. And that's what we're trying to accomplish, again, through social media, is to build that connection, and you put out enough information and enough problems to their solution that when their problem becomes unbearable, they think, well, Rachel has already helped me so much for free through just her online education. She's probably going to be the person that can help me with this new problem.
Yeah, all three of us have done some consulting and helped advisors on social media. And it's funny, I will be talking to somebody and I'll say, hey, you know, who do you want to market to? What do you want your niche to be? And they'll say, retirees and high income accumulators. So basically the whole world that anybody would want to work with, right? And I think at the end of the day, the reason they say that is because they don't want to have to turn away business. Picking a niche is not about turning away business. I personally only work with my niche. I actually do turn away the business, the retirees, et cetera. But picking a niche is really about marketing, right? It's really about speaking to somebody. And all of us can attest to, we've received hundreds of messages from people on social media simply saying, I feel like all you do is talk to me, right? And that's what you want out of your social media. You want people to be following you and think, man, do they know my life? Do they know everything I'm going through? And at the end of the day, we don't. But what happens is we work with 50, 75, 100 people in this same group, right? And so we know what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're struggling with. And if they are, there is so many other people struggling with it. So I think you can't get started on social media. You can't be good at social media until you nail down who do you want to work with. And I know Adam Kamela's in here. He's a friend of mine, and he started off with, you know, we work with optometrists. And then it became, we work with optometrists that are going to sell. And then it became, we work with optometrists that are going to sell within 2 years, right? And so the more hyper-specific you can become, the deeper this knowledge base can be, right? And I think about this in the way of everybody has egos, right? Everybody wants the best person working with them. Like I think about myself. If I was gonna hire a financial advisor, I would say, I want a financial advisor who works with people who have multiple businesses, who have equity compensation and are very high income earners in their 30s. I wouldn't say, hey dad, who's your financial advisor? Let me go work with him, right? No, I would say I deserve the best financial advisor that knows everything that I'm going through, and that's who I want to work with, and that is why having a niche is so important.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that's really important is you have to give content the time to work. So when we hear that people are failing at social media, most of the time they're quitting prematurely. Really the key with social media is that you have to understand that it is a long game. So if you want to start posting today and you're expecting prospects in your inbox next week, it's just not the method for you. This is a game where the disconnect between the input and output is really large. So you have to go into it understanding that you're committing to putting in a lot of time and you're going to wait a long time to see the results. Josh Brown talked about this a lot yesterday. But if you're not going to start posting on a platform, if you're not going to commit to consistency with social media, it's really not worth your time. It took me almost 12 months to see my first prospect, to land my first client. I think all of you can get there a lot quicker with these tips and advice we're giving you. There's a lot of things that I didn't know. What I did know was that it was going to take a while. I was fortunate for that. And so I set up a strategy for myself where I decided to post every single day on Twitter for 1 year. 2 tweets a day, 2 threads a week. Was not allowed to reevaluate the decision. I was not allowed to get frustrated and quit. If at the end of the year I had 100 followers, no leads, by all means, I need to quit, but I was not allowed to do it before consistently posting for 1 year. And I think it takes at least a year. I think, like I said, we could all get there quicker if we knew all the tips and the tricks to social media, but it takes a while because when people see you post, their first post that they see of yours, they're not going to reach out to you. Unlikely, it's very rare, because they're starting to build up trust and credibility with you. It takes really, depending on the platform, a few dozen posts before they say, wow, this person has spoken to me enough about my specific situation. I really trust at this point that they are the person for me.
And I think your expectations matter. I tell people 2 years, to be honest, because I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, wow, that's a really long time. Like, what about the 2 years before that? Regardless, in the short term, if you need clients, you have to do more outbound stuff, right? You have to go to events, you have to do what you have to do. But I tell people 2 years because if you say 1 year and it doesn't happen, you give up, right? And so Josh talked about this a lot yesterday. Like, this is something that you have to do over and over and over again. So if you say 6 months and it doesn't happen, you give up. If you say 2 years and you get results in a year, you're over the moon, right? You're super happy, you feel like you're killing it. And so I think figuring out that, giving yourself that time frame is important, but also understand we're giving you this like rule of thumb, but what you do matters, right? If you're gonna get started on social media and you're gonna post twice a week, it's gonna take longer than somebody who's gonna get started and be able to post 10 times a week, right? Because social media isn't really one of these things where you really are just like pushing people to you instantly. All of my growth, and I know Rachel can attest to the same thing, has come from like 20 posts. Basically, we're doing good stuff, we're nurturing, we're getting more eyes on it, but then you just have some really big ones that end up getting so many eyes and pushing your growth above it. And so we talked about, both of us, like 15 prospects a month. It doesn't really look like 15 prospects a month. It looks like 180 a year, but it might be like 60 over 2 months. And then we might have 3, and then you might have like 4, and then all of a sudden you have another month with 25, right? It's not just this linear path. And I know that was something I struggled with early on, is like, am I bad at this now? Like, I haven't gotten that many people over this quarter. You look backwards and you're like, is summer a bad time for prospects? That's just not really how it works. It just ebbs and flows, and it just depends on what is happening, and you just want to keep putting good content because you really don't know what's going to stick and what's going to be that post.
Yeah, and you'll have some posts take off, go super viral, and get no prospects from it. You'll have some posts not do well, or at least you don't think it's going to do well, and then for some reason, prospects are showing up in your inbox. One of the mistakes we see is people chasing vanity metrics and virality. The difference between what we're doing and what a lot of influencers are doing is that we're trying to build a business. And we don't need millions of followers to do that. We need just 1,000 true fans, as the essay says. And so most of us could build a super profitable business with just 100 to 200 clients, depending on who you serve and what you charge. So virality is really not important to us. There are social media accounts out there that have way more followers than I do, that have millions of followers, and I would not trade my account for theirs because I have a different messaging than theirs. There are accounts that have millions of followers that could not sell a high-end product, not a single high-end product. It's all about the quality of the followers that we're building. So we don't want to get stuck in this loop of trying to chase another viral post if it doesn't convert. We want posts that convert to leads, that convert to clients, that convert to the ideal client for you. We don't want posts that just get tons of impressions and go nowhere.
Yeah. Another mistake I think we have to hit on is trying to do too much. So I think people leave these conferences and they get really excited, right? We got to get started on social media. And so they're like, okay, great. I'm going to start on Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm going to do Instagram, I'm going to have a podcast, I'm going to have a newsletter, and I'm going to do YouTube. And what ends up happening is you just become extremely average at all of them, and then you give up on doing it, right? Josh Brown talked about this yesterday. He said, if you can't see yourself still doing it 1, 2, 3 years from now, then you're doing too much. And so when I started on social media, my goal was, how do I create a system that I can still be doing 5 years from now? So all I did was my blog. I had a blog and 3 posts. I cut down on the time it took to do that, and then I started adding newsletter. I was like, that feels like an easy add-in. Got good at that. I started to post 5 times a week, right? Got good at that. I added a podcast. Got good at that. Started posting twice a day on LinkedIn. Then I added Twitter, right? I just built up and got to the point where I got the reps in. I got better at it. I reduced the time it took. And I just want everybody walking away from here to figure out like one thing that you really want to be doing. And it doesn't matter the platform, to be honest. If you like video, do video. If you like writing, pick the place you're going to be. Because for me, everybody's like, oh, do you do LinkedIn? Do you do other places? I do. But to be honest, I don't really get any clients from anywhere other than Twitter. And if you look at the time I spend on Twitter, it's why, right? I like being on the platform. I like engaging. I like talking to people there. I hate LinkedIn. I hate the comments on it. I don't think I learn anything from there. So I look and I spend 2 minutes a day on average on LinkedIn, even though I post 3 times a day and I schedule that out. So it doesn't really matter what the platform is. People are like, oh, but our retirees on Twitter? Everybody is everywhere. There is enough of an audience on any single platform that you like to grow a business from it.
Yeah, and I would say like one thing that we kind of mentioned earlier is you can't view it as a linear process. You're not going to go home, post something about Roth IRAs tomorrow, and next week you're going to have inbound leads. Like, it's a lot longer game than that. And I was grateful, like when I first got started back in 2020, like I had a couple clients come in from social media within, it was about the 4-month mark, but it was also just not linear at all. It started, and this probably be the last thing that I share up here, is it started with social media. There was a post on Twitter. It was like kind of like an engagement thing. It was like introduce who you are and what you do so people can just become aware. So there was like graphic designers, things posting, but I just said, I'm a financial planner that works with recent graduates on a subscription model, so it's affordable. Like at the time I was doing like, I think it was like $75 a month, which was not a great business model. But it started there, and someone, like, people were reading the comments and just saw my name there. They thought that was interesting, reached out over direct messages like, hey, I've never seen anyone talk about this before. I know this girl who runs a blog for college students and recent graduates talking about money, like how to manage money in the adult world. Like, I think you guys would be really good connection, like there's something there. So he connected us. I ended up doing an interview with them. They sent out the interview to the newsletter. It was an article on their website. So thousands of people in my exact audience that I wanted to work with were seeing my money story and seeing just like who I work with. And from that, there was a link to my website within that article in the newsletter. They went over there. On my website, there was a free ebook. It was like common mistakes that millennials make with money and how to avoid them, or something like that. So they put in their email, and I had 4 or 5 automated emails, the sequence coming out, just introducing who I am, who I serve, why I started this business. And then the last one was just a very soft call to action. Like, after all this, if you think you would benefit from working with an advisor, here's a link to schedule a call. She ended up one of those subscribers, scheduled a call. We got on Discovery, and a couple weeks later, like, she became a client. It all started from social media, but there was like 5, 6 different pieces of the marketing funnel that were all a part of that. So it's definitely not linear. Like, you're not going to post something, someone sends you a direct message, hey, I'm ready to work together. Like, that might happen over time. That'd be great, but you can't just view it as something like that.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about grabbing attention. So I think, we've talked about this a lot. You're never going to put out a post and people just all of a sudden want to work with you, but how you craft posts matters, right? So we know we're trying to grab attention. And, early on when I got started, I realized I was like, man, I feel like my social is pretty good, but I just don't feel like I'm getting a lot of attention. And so I reached out to Samantha Russell and I said, Samantha, please help me. Like, what am I missing? And she said, your posts are really good, but you don't have a hook. And she told me that you should be spending at least the same amount of time on the hook as you are on the post. And so the hook is all about just getting people to actually stop scrolling and read what you do. And there's a lot of different ways to do this, right? Rachel talked about establishing credibility. There's statistics, et cetera. This is a post of mine from a year ago that says, I'm a financial planner that works with the wealthiest 1% of people in their 30s and 40s. I wish everyone understood these 10 critical lessons about finance. I am 100% sure I posted something similar a year or two before that just said, I wish everyone understood these 10 critical lessons about finance, and nobody read it. Why did nobody read it? Well, maybe some of my followers did, but what ends up happening is you start to get attention, it starts to get pushed out, and people who don't know you see it and they're like, why am I gonna read this? This guy has no idea what he's talking about. And so that first line was enough of a hook to grab people's attention to say, okay, if he works with those type of people, I'm one of those people, I need to go learn this from him, or I wanna be one of those people, I need to learn this from him. And the hook is honestly the most important part. Both of them can attest to this. Like, early on, I would message them all the time and say, I'm stuck, please help me. I don't think this hook is very good. And, I push everybody to like have a little bit of a group. Like, us 3 have kind of always been a group. I've always, my wife's a good writer. Like, you need people to bounce ideas off of, but you really need to spend time on the hook. And I know, Rachel, you have a lot to chime in here too, because this is one thing you're really good at.
Yeah, there's just so much noise on social media, right? So you could have the best information in the world, the best story to share, but if you don't start with a strong hook, no one will ever see it. So in the beginning, it's really lopsided the amount of time that you have to spend just on this first tweet or the first 30 seconds of a YouTube video or the thumbnail, because what you're trying to do here is tell somebody why this matters to them, right? So what Thomas does here is a curiosity loop of somebody's thinking, oh, I wonder if, if I know about these lessons, and I want to make sure I don't miss out on them. But then two, why listen to you? So with this hook, he's establishing both of those things. We have to remember the so what test. When you're creating a hook, you have to think in the viewer's mind, why would they want to click on this hook, this thread, this YouTube video? How does it affect them? There's a ton of different ways to do this. We share a ton of frameworks in our course too that we have, but you have to ask yourself that question. What would intrigue somebody and have them be so curious that they stop scrolling and they cannot scroll past without seeing what the answer is? In a hyper-competitive market like social media, if you're not including a curiosity loop there, and then some credibility too, maybe in some of your hooks, you're going to be lost among all the noise. So in the beginning, one of the best tips of advice I would give is that if you're writing a piece of content or you're putting it together, spend an extreme amount of time just on the hook. Get that right, and then the rest of the content will flow.
And the last thing that we need to hit on is repurposing. So I think when I bring up repurposing, a lot of advisors think repurposing means Monday morning I'm posting this, and the next Tuesday night I'm posting the exact same thing, right? That's not repurposing. That's really just being boring, and you're going to lose your following really quickly. Repurposing is using one piece of content many times over and over and over in different ways. So what you'll see on this is, okay, great, I had this Twitter thread, it blew up. You know what, it's probably going to do well on LinkedIn as well. So, but you don't just post it in the same way. We basically have similar hook, expand on it, and then we have a carousel. But then it doesn't stop there. Then I have a newsletter. Then I have a podcast. Then I have a YouTube video. Then I take all of those 10 points and I put them into individual parts. And it doesn't also stop there, right? Next year, I'm going to post it again, right? And Justin Welsh is one of the best content creators out there. And he really opened my eyes to this. About a couple years ago, he had a post that said, don't show me your newest content, show me your best content. So I look right now and I have 36,000 Twitter followers. In January I had 30, I had 15 the January before, 7,500 the January before, and 800 before. So if I had an amazing post 2 years ago, most of my audience has never even seen that. So I need to go backwards and take it and put it this year. So if you look at my social media, you would have no idea, but 90% of it is just reused old content, maybe even more. When I have a new idea or I have one new thread a week, that is new. Everything else is reused and repurposed. And this is where people say, but what happens if somebody remembers that post? If somebody remembers your post from a year ago, you won. The game is over. Your content is so good that they've seen millions of posts and they still remembered it. And then the other part about it is we all know that we can't receive information always at the right time, right? I might have this great post, but somebody might have been going through something hard in their life, or maybe they just weren't in the headspace to even be thinking about personal finance. So I need to keep putting it in front of them until they can actually receive it, learn from it, and adopt it. The last thing I want to hit on is you also can use your content for client education. So I only have 30 seconds, so I'll just basically show this one. But for example, I have clients, we're moving into estate planning, and I want to be the one to educate them on it. So we'll have a conversation, the meeting's going to end, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to make sure before you go into meeting with the estate planning attorney that you feel really educated. Here's 5 podcasts I've done and 6 blogs that I've done to educate you on all the key terms, everything that you need to know, so you can walk in feeling really good and educated to make the right decisions for you, right? So at the end of the day, I don't think you can lose at social media or content, even if you don't get clients, because you get to educate your own existing clients, you get to become a better speaker, a better writer, and it just makes you more knowledgeable as a financial advisor. So I think that is our time. Everybody, you can scan, this is our QR code. We have a course for financial advisors, all on social media marketing. It's us 3 talking. It's maybe 4 hours long, building you all the way from the beginning to how to write content, where to do it, hooks, etc. But thanks for having us, everybody. We'll be out there afterwards for any questions you have.
Thank you.